the beginning part of this book, the beginning part of it is who, me, which is what we have done this night. We've talked a bit about how you have come to St. Bartholomew's, and some of you have added to that story, because we all do have our own story, how you came not only to St. Bartholomew's, but how you came to a sense of belonging. And I think that's a lot of what we all are looking for, is we want to belong somewhere or another, and for a lot of us, that belonging does happen at church. So I want to talk just basically a real basic overview of the Episcopal Church. We're going to go more in depth in a couple of weeks, but one of the things I want to look at is, if you have a book, if you would please open it to page 20. What I'd like to do is go through this and read it a bit at a time. We're asking this, we're asking who, me, we're asking how we, as they said on the page before, the frozen chosen thaw out. For some reason or another, whatever church I have been in, somebody always mentions that about the Christian faith being part of the frozen chosen. It doesn't matter whether you're Episcopalian, it doesn't matter whether you're Methodist, it doesn't matter whether you're Baptist, it doesn't matter what you are. Somewhere along the line, somebody always talks about being God's frozen chosen. But I like the fact that this author talks about the fact that the Episcopal Church is not only the frozen chosen, but is the frozen chosen that is thawing out. Because there's that history there, back in the 50s and before, is that in order to be an Episcopalian, you had to be part of the elitist group. You had to be fairly well off. You had to have a very stable community, a stable job, and you had to be somebody important in the community. And that doesn't work now because of our very mobile lifestyle. But also because most of us don't want to be part of a parish, a church, that is so staid and, this is how we're supposed to act, even if you're not like that when you go home. This is how we're supposed to be. So the fact that he says that the frozen chosen to thaw out. We're asking this because through our prayers and worship, we hear the Lord inviting us to play our part in taking on the tremendous challenges before us. We also hear the Spirit's voice reawakening us to the tremendous gifts that God has given us. Episcopalians are realizing anew that God sees tremendous potential in us. And one of the ways that God sees tremendous potential in us is through something called, that you see on your outline, the Episcopal Relief and Development. The Episcopal Relief and Development was started by a presiding bishop a number of years ago. It wasn't this one, who is Catherine Jefferts Shorey, is our current presiding bishop. The one before her was Frank Griswold. I do not believe it was him, I believe it was the one before him. The presiding bishop is the bishop of all of the United States. That's why it's called Episcopal, not Anglican. There's a difference. Episcopal has to do with the United States of America. Anglican has to do with the worldwide Anglican Communion. In other words, people that use the same prayer book that we use, but are all across the world and all across all the nations. The Episcopal Relief and Development has told the Episcopal story in thousands and thousands of different ways, especially in places where hardly anybody wants to touch it. They go into remote areas, they go into places, even here in the United States, where you've got poverty, where you have things like people drinking poisoned and contaminated water, where there is not enough food, where you don't have families that are able to support themselves. The Episcopal Relief and Development goes into those places not only in this country but worldwide, and provides a place for, provides the opportunity for people to have things like safe drinking water, like a roof over their head. And that's one of the things that we say how we are thawing out, is that we're really beginning to care for the world and not just our closed little community, because that's how it used to be. Not only in the Episcopal Church, but having grown up Baptist, it was like that for me. It was this little circle of people, and that was the world. And our world has just exploded in such a way that we realize that we have to be concerned with much more. And so in that sense, we are thawing out. I would like to start, Anne, if I could start with you again. If you would read just that one sentence beginning, God sees us passionately. And then I'd like us to go around and each read a sentence, please.
Okay. God sees us passionately devoted to the gospel of Jesus Christ.
God sees us willing to fight poverty, disease, and injustice.
God sees us as thinkers.
God sees us as accepting and open-minded.
God sees us as reconcilers and forgivers.
God sees us forming faithful and inclusive communities.
God sees us as upholders of valuable tradition.
God sees us devoted to the Eucharist.
God sees us offering helpful missionary opportunities.
God sees us that we have good news to share.
We all know that you don't have to be an Episcopalian to help solve the world's problems. Religious people have never had a corner on morality. But God is using the Episcopal Church to accomplish work that desperately needs to be done, to feed, to heal, and to reconcile a hurting world that is just waiting for us to do our part. Janet, if you could.
Yes, the Lord is up to some earth-shaking changes.
And we want to be part of it.
No, we're not all of it.
And we're certainly not in charge of it.
But we're strapping ourselves in, packing a big lunch, and pinching ourselves, joining every saint and prophet who's preceded us, as we continually ask, who, me?
Okay. The other thing that this author mentions is that he heard a preacher say one time, we are saved to serve. So one of the things that I want to ask you, in your Episcopal or newly Episcopal or not Episcopal tradition, what does it mean to be saved?
Discovering yourself, discovering your role in the world.
Okay. There are no wrong answers here. I want to hear what you all think. What does it mean to be saved?
A true relationship with God.
Which would look, how would that look? What would that be like?
Well, a realization that God is everything to you and that you can depend on Him. And it's more like a partnership and also a Father that you can go to, and He's always there to help you in time of trouble and wherever. But there's a part you have to do as well as parts that He has to do. And they don't really overlap. You can't do what God does and He's not going to do what you're supposed to do.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's like the fact that like God just loved us so much, you know, that we're sort of already forgiven, and I think it's like a big responsibility to have to, I mean, we can't pay it back, but just to try to do the best we can to be that love for other people.
See, I kind of reject the concept. It sounds to me exclusive. Some people are saved. We're here saved. You know, it's going to be the frozen chosen. We start talking about being saved. We're here saved. The guys out there, oh, they're not dealing with church tonight, so they must not be saved. Some people are saved. Some people are not. And I don't know. This strikes me as a Baptist concept, and you know, it rubs me the wrong way. And to me, it's important to feel, kind of at risk. I don't consider that I'm safe. I don't consider that I'm damned. But it could go either way. And I'm not. I consider myself constantly struggling, and I don't like to categorize people as either being saved or not, and I don't feel secure that anybody is or isn't.
Okay, thank you. Because really, when you talk about who is saved and who's not, what you do is you get into predestination. I'm not going there, okay? We're not going to talk about predestination here. If you all want to talk about it, go outside. Because that's a really good Presbyterian / Calvinistic concept, and a good Baptist one as well. Is that, yes, you're saved and the other person isn't. And so therefore you have to go and you have to be a missionary and you have to make sure that that person is saved. I've had any number of people come up to me and say, "Are you saved? If you die tonight, are you going to go to heaven?" And I just want to look and say, "Go away." I'm not worried about that. Maybe you are, but I'm not.
But isn't that a personal feeling based on your relationship and feeling about religion and your interaction with God?
But you're using a word that I think we all need to hear, and that is relationship. This isn't about being saved, this is about being in relationship. And so that's one of the things that I want to get sparked here. Is that, in a sense, you're very right, Charlie. I hear what you're saying, not so much right or wrong, but that it's not about being saved, it's about being in a relationship with God. And using that relationship to take your gospel, your good news out.
And going back to personal relationships, some of the important things that's happened in my life, and one of them was when I met my present wife.
Oh, you had a former life?
I did not. God did.
Sorry.
Yes, he has a whole big family. And it was wonderful. I was on the committee, as I have been for all through college, on helping out and doing. And we was in charge I was in charge of the youth program. And all the people, I was drawn to Janet to help me do the tailoring. And so we went into a little room and a vision came. Watch where you trod. This may be the mother of your children. The light was turned off. It came back on, and there was a baby in a little thing behind us. I walked to my room scared to death. And so, late that night, I asked her if we could go have a Coke. Indeed not. I'm in my night clothes. Well, that was it. My roommate says, "Frank, let's go on a picnic." And I said, "Who will you take?" I like that tall, dark-haired girl named Janet. And I jumped out of my bed. Actually, I felt like, and I said, "Oh Lord, I've lost her." Well, you see what happened.
You see who won.
I think in your daily lives that you live, there are things that remind you that there is a powerful thing. I remember once being in a storm, and I think every hair on my head rose, and it was lightning. And I had been done. Well, I walked out and I said, "God, I know you spoke, and I will behave. I will not do foolish things like this." And then sometimes you do something for somebody and share it, and they're so gracious and they make you feel so good until you know that you've done well, and that God led you to do that, because the devil will not let you do it. It's all within yourself and the way you look at your life and the way you live your life, I think.
Okay, thank you, Frank. This is a time I just want to open it up. We've heard each other's story. But this is also a time for thoughts and discussion, and what I'd like to know is some of you are here and have been Episcopalians for a very long time. And some of you are here and really have only been coming to St. Bartholomew's for a very short time and are not Episcopalians, sort of, maybe, not quite sure. So what I want to know is you've come to this study, and have there been any questions on your mind this past week or since we started talking about it that you'd like to air? You know, we've got a little bit of time here, and I'd like to open it up and just say, are there any questions that you have that we could talk about tonight?
What is our church doing to meet the Millennium Goals?
Okay, let's talk about the Millennium Development Goals. The Millennium, there are 8 of them, okay, and a lot of it has to do with poverty, clean water, education for not only children, but equal education for women. One of the things that we do every year is we make a commitment to give, now this is monetary, this is financial, to give a certain amount of money to the diocese, which then takes that money and not only pays the salary of the bishop and the bishop's staff, but it also uses that money to be able to do things like Latino ministries, which are all mission churches in our diocese. It uses that money to be able to do classes at churches such as St. Stephen and the Incarnation, which has 1 paid clergy and the rest of them are either volunteer or very part-time. And so that monetary commitment that we make goes out into the diocese, and the diocese makes a commitment monetarily to go to the Episcopal Church, and so it's this heading forward on a monetary basis. There have been trips from this diocese to Honduras in the past to build houses. One of the things that St. Bartholomew's did for years was support an orphanage in Kenya, Mirembe. That is no longer happening because the priest who ran the orphanage has retired, and most of those girls have gone on into adult life. And the other thing that we're doing is, you'll find this in October, is we are having someone from Food for the Poor to come back to our church, and we are making our church available for this priest to be able to speak to us about the work that is going on worldwide in order to be able to help people who do not have water, do not have houses. When you come in, if you come in the back door of the church, not the front door, and you go up the steps to the sacristy that will lead you into the church, just before you get to those steps, go look on the bulletin board there. There's a poster that's hanging there, and you can take that down and read it. And it has to do with Food for the Poor and how we are working with this group who is Episcopal. It's an Episcopal group of priests and of workers who go out to different communities and assist people in being able to have a better life. Simple things, clean water, a house, medicinal care for their children. Take that poster down and look at it and see what some of the things that the Episcopal Church is doing toward, resolving and coming to pass the Millennium Development Goals.
Does our church have any formal connection with the Episcopal Relief and Development?
Each church can. We do that often on Good Friday. If we take an offering, that will go directly to the Episcopal Relief and Development. There are different bulletins that I will get on a regular basis that I can put into the bulletin and say, you can give to Episcopal Relief and Development on your own, or you can send a monetary gift in through St. Bartholomew's. When we collect however many there are, we'll send one total check. So yes, we do. You can get involved in mission trips. They're there. It's a matter of letting people know at this point about them. We don't have a large enough youth group at this point to be able to send a youth group. A lot of churches do. St. John's used to. I don't know if they do anymore. But those are some things that can be a part of our future.
So one of the things I've always been sensitive to is when reaching out to help folks is making sure the end goal is for them to be able to help themselves. And I understand when you don't even have food on your plate, it's hard to think of economies and self-sustainment. But what's the path that you see to or is that the path or end goal that you see as well?
Okay, one of the things that Episcopal Relief and Development does that is very similar to the Heifer Project. Are you all familiar with the Heifer Project? Okay. Heifer Project is a worldwide project that gives poor communities an opportunity to be self-sustaining. And so they will, and you can make donations, like I do it every Christmas. Instead of giving somebody a Christmas gift, I give them a gift of a duck. They don't get the duck, the community gets the duck, okay? But I do it in their name. And so this community gets a couple ducks. What they do is they have baby ducks, they have eggs, they also can maybe receive some chickens, and then they become self-supporting because they can take those eggs and sell them at the market. The women of that particular community will often band together and form their own little business to be able to do things that we see in shops like 10,000 Villages. Go on to Episcopal Relief and Development and you can see some of the different places that they help that will assist those communities to become self-sufficient. It's not this constant giving out so that they become dependent. It is giving people an opportunity to provide for themselves, but they need a head start. They need some help to begin with. African Palms at St. John's does that. African Palms is an organization through St. John's Episcopal Church in Olney where they make palms from Africa and then send them out to churches in the United States that buy them, and that money then goes back to African Palms and they build wells. They assist different communities throughout Africa to be able to become self-sufficient. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yeah, at St. John's, I remember the last year that we were there, they had 80 cases that were going out near, I think it was just after Christmas, right, getting ready for Palm Sunday, that they were sending out to all over the states. And I also know the Heifer Project is doesn't just give out the duck, they also teach the community how to take care of it and why they shouldn't just eat this duck, why it's more essential to wait and patience will bring you a lot more than what you have now. So, yes, it does.
Well,
Thanks.
I know we've done some things that were right here among our own needy. I know Frank Kimmel has collected money for the social workers who work with children, and I'm wondering, could we do some more things like that?
We actually are on the cusp of doing that. I've spoken with Norma and Franca today. We're going to expand our blessing ministry, and they will be calling you. So yes, we are expanding what we're calling our blessing ministry to be able to help not only our own but also community-wise for people that that might need some shoring up.
I had a question about the Millennium Goals and why did the church choose those goals? Because it's associated with a political body, right? I mean, I think the goals are all good goals, but this is on page 14, and so it's associated with a political body, which means the goals that they're going to choose are influenced by politics and what's popular. And I think when I read through all the goals, I thought they were all great goals, but it just seems odd that a church would let or follow goals set by this political organization. And for example, and I think all of them are pretty broad, but for goal 3, promote gender equality and empower women, which is a good goal in itself, but it excludes so many other oppressed groups in the world, right? So I think like a better goal would be promote equality and empower depressed people or people that are subject to prosecution or persecution in the world. And so by limiting it that way, it's sort of excluding other groups. For example, like I would say like, oh, for women, there's probably women in maybe Kenya or Malaysia or countries where being a lesbian would be imprisoned or stoned to death. For those women, I think it would be more important for them to be able to be protected and to have an organization like the big church behind them. So just by limiting it, it just makes me feel it's excluding other things. So is this exclusive, or does the church have other things to go with it? And what was the thought process of accepting like these goals from a political party without seeming like any thought process or making it more exclusive for everyone if the church is going to be open for
I
everyone?
did not become familiar with the Millennium Development Goals until I got to St. Luke's in Washington, D.C. in 2007. So by that time, those goals had been set. I was not part of a group that actually worked on what goals to set. It was a much bigger group than just, you know, an individual. I think one of the things that they are very broad. They're very broad concepts, but I think within those concepts there is that sense that it is not only like this, the second one, universal primary education. Well, that's a wonderful goal to have, but how are you going to do it? Because you have to really do it one community at a time. And so it would mean just little bits and pieces here and there, being able to work on that in different community settings. I think what the Millennium Development Goals gave us was an opportunity to look at them and not only pray over them, but actually say, okay, this is a goal that we can help achieve, but let's dig a little deeper and actually go more into what that goal might actually mean. I don't have a good solid answer for you because quite honestly, I don't know, except that the Episcopal Church is asking each congregation to pick a couple goals and say, how do we achieve this?
Yeah, if I could, I mean, the Millennium Development Goals were, as much as anybody can, designed not to be political. I mean, it was not a political party that did it. It was, except, if you like, everything can be political. I mean, we had nearly 190 countries signing up to it. It almost became like a treaty. And those countries come from all different political... So it was, I think, some tangible goals that were sufficiently powerful that a lot of people could sign on to them, including many of the churches. And better to have powerful goals which you can measure rather than, well, let's try and have everybody doing, you know, their own thing without any measurement, without any knowledge whether it's been efficient or not.
But I was just thinking, if someone has a calling that's not part of this, that, you know, I want to protect, if people that are being persecuted across the world for their religious beliefs, like if someone had that ability and wanted to do something like that, and it would fall outside of these goals, would the church not be behind them, or the church are free to add to these? This is just the basis?
Not so much add, but to, as I said, go deeper into them, so that you take a goal, one of them, to be able to do equality. And what does equality mean for that, for you, not only you, but maybe the community that you are a part of, so that it's not just one of these, but it takes one of these and goes farther into it.
Can I add?
Yes.
I would just submit that at least having these Millennium Goals gives a direction rather than not having anything and having no direction.
Does the church have to restrict what it does to tie to these goals, or is it also allowed to take on additional? Okay.
You know, like we took on an orphanage, Mirembe. Yes, that's primary education for children, but we ended up giving medical attention to girls. About 2 years ago, there was a horrific fire in the orphanage, and we actually sent money over to get those girls medical care, and for some